So thank you once again for joining us this morning. Let me bring you up to speed with what is happening in the news, where at least 9 people are feared dead and a score of others have sustained serious injuries following a road accident involving a matatu in Machakos County last evening. Now confirming the incident, Yatta Sub-County Police Commander, that is Jane Macau, said 8 people died on the spot following the accident that occurred near Katange Market along the Machakos-Kitui Highway. Victims of the accident were rushed to the Machakos Level 5 hospital for treatment. The driver of the ill-fated vehicle that was also carrying tons of bags of charcoal is said to have lost control before landing in a ditch.
Kwa sasa ningalipenda kuomba public kama relatives wangojee mahali ambapo tumewaonyesha ili tuwape madaktari nafasi ya kutosha waweze kuhudumia wagonjwa, kwa sababu dakika moja ya kuinterrupt daktari inaweza kusababisha maisha kupotea. Hivyo basi nimefunga casualty kwa wageni kwa sasa mpaka wakati ambapo madaktari wataweza kuwachukua wale wanakuja na wale ambapo wanaendelea kupata matibabu.
Our condolences to the families who've lost loved ones and definitely quick recovery through the injured. Now, police and prisons officers are set to receive 40% salary increment starting July this year. Interior Principal Secretary Raymond Omolo says the increment will be implemented in 3 phases. He said the move is part of the reforms in the security sector.
4 months after receiving the National Task Force report on police reforms, the government has reassured of its commitment to full implementation of its recommendations. Speaking after hosting a Peace, Security and Development Cooperation Roundtable in Nairobi, Interior Permanent Secretary Raymond Omolo confirmed that the proposed increment of salaries for security officers will be top on the reforms agenda.
Maybe just a top highlight of some of those priorities. One is with regards to the institutional reforms within the security sector. So whether it's the reforms within the National Police Service, the reforms within the Kenya Prison Service, and generally the reforms within the coordination of national government administration.
He said the government, in collaboration with development partners, has made strides in security sector reforms by enhancing the capacity of the national security agencies.
Engagements towards improving not just the infrastructure, but also capacity building of the officers that work with us within the ministry.
And in particular, on behalf of Correctional Services, State Department, we commit to implement the Maraga report to its fullest extent.
Representatives of the development partners have in the meantime lauded Kenya's commitment to implementation of police reforms, as well as safeguarding the welfare of refugees.
We had the opportunity this morning to look at a whole range of areas of cooperation. Let me just touch on 3 so rapidly. The first, in the area of the refugee file. We're so excited that the Sharika plan, after 30 years of generous hosting of refugees in Kenya, is going to help us make this transition to helping the development of host communities and refugees together. We're really, as partners, looking forward to supporting that.
The government has warned that any security officer found culpable of working in cahoots with drug barons will not only be sacked but also face the full force of the law. Speaking in Mombasa County, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said the government will no longer sit and watch as a generation that is wiped out due to substance abuse, and he asked the authorities to ensure that they do not give a blind eye to the menace. This as the government ordered the arrest of drug barons in the coast region within the coming 4 days.
The rising magnitude of drug and substance abuse in the country is giving the authorities sleepless nights, with the government targeting the source, the drug barons. And the ideal place to begin, the coastal region. It's against this background that the state agencies and stakeholders conference on ending illicit brews, drugs and substance abuse chose Mombasa County for the forum. Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua putting on notice security operators for sleeping with the drug barons. Sentiments echoed by the Interior and National Administration Cabinet Secretary Kindiki Kithure, Inspector General Japheth Kome, and other leaders present.
Sasa kwani ni kazi gani sisi tunafanya? Hii watu wanajulikana, pahali wanauza wanajulikana. Nyinyi mfanye kazi yenu. I think within 2 weeks RC, you must get rid of this problem. Tunataka kusikia watu kotini. Please, can you do your job? Tafadhali mfanye kazi yenu. Wacha tuheshimiane tafadhali. Kila mtu afanye kazi yake. Nyinyi mko na mshahara, sisi tuko na mshahara. Kila mtu wako na mshahara. Kila mtu afanye kazi yake.
Any official in the law enforcement and public service space who through action or inaction contributes to the death of Kenyans, through negligence, they allow dangerous criminals, organized criminals, including drug barons, to have their way to access the public. That officer will not be transferred, as you've said, Your Excellency, elsewhere, because every inch of our territory requires efficient services and the protection of its national security organs.
But the biggest weakness that has been there towards eradicating this menace is at the enforcement level. If we know these drug dealers, how comes they've not been apprehended?
Hakuna siku waziri wangu profesa. Hakuna siku deputy president. Hakuna siku president amenipigia simu kuniambia usishike huyu. Aachilia huyu. Sasa nani anakupigia simu?
The DP at the same time took coast leaders for remaining mum on the vice.
These are elected leaders. Mbona wanaogopa kuongea? Or could it be some of these drug barons waliwasaidia wakitafuta viti? This is a question we asking, because why are people quiet?
Meanwhile, the Deputy President instructed that all criminal gangs in Kisauni and Likoni are dealt with.
Thank you, Anne Buru, for that report. Controversial televangelist Bishop David Kariuki, alias Gakuyo, and founder of the Ekeza Sacco, has finally been charged with 13 offences. Gakuyo, who is charged for defrauding a section of Kenyans over 1 billion shillings through the Sacco between 2015 and 2018, denied the offences and was released on a 20 million shillings bond. Elsewhere, 2 families from Meru County have moved to court to seek redress over burial wrangles of their father. Details in the Skills of Justice segment.
Appearing before Senior Principal Magistrate Ben Makehubi, the Calvary Chosen Center Church overseer Gakuyo pleaded not guilty to 13 charges. The court was treated to a drama after Gakuyo declined to take plea for Ekeza Sacco, with this battery of lawyers led by Ndegwa Njiru claiming those are 2 separate entities.
Be told to plead to a charge to him. That charge can only be read to Ekeza Sacco. That should be very clear, and we will raise it.
I thought they were one and the same.
No.
I can help. No. It's our application.
Gakuyo and Ekeza Sacco are also charged with obtaining money under the pretense that they could sell land.
Question of public interest is a creation of the prosecution in attempts to spike emotions in this case. We ask that the court does admit the accused person on reasonable bail terms and conditions.
Prosecutor Henry Kinyanjui urged the court to issue a warrant of arrest for the second accused, Ekeza Sacco, for not appearing in court. Gakuyo has been in custody since 21st February 2024, when he was arrested en route to Zambia.
This person may be granted a cash bail of Kenya shillings 10 million, so a cash bail of 10 million shillings, and then he'll provide 2 contact persons. Yeah, so 10 million Kenya shillings with 2 contact persons who will be examined by the court. And the further directive is that one of the contact persons must be an employee working with the government or a public officer. And then the C, the first accused person to deposit his passport as a prerequisite for being admitted to bond.
And 2 families are moved to court over where to bury their father Silas Kamuta Igweta, aged 100 years. The first family is opposed to a decision to bury the man at the second family's home.
They developed sickness, and for 40 years, Mzee has been at the custody of the daughters and the sons who are here and their second wife, mother. He wrote a will saying that he should be buried in the second wife's place.
And away from the scales of justice now, a section of Ma leaders on Monday staged peaceful protest in Maralal, Samburu County following the killing of Angata Nanyukue MCA, that is Paul Leshimpiro, by bandits led by Samburu Governor Lati Lelelet and his Kajiado counterpart Joseph Olelenku. Leaders and residents condemned the killing as they petitioned the county commissioner's office to bring perpetrators to book. The governor's alleged bandits have moved away from cattle rustling and now want the residents to abandon their land by launching attacks.
Hapa tunadanganya rais kila siku kumba this valley is inaccessible. Wakati ya Moi, kwani Moi alikuwa anaingia huko anatoa na amani inakuja for 20 years. Wakati ya Moi hakuna mtu alikuwa anaishi Malaso. Because watu walikuwa wanatumbia and then chini tuoni watu.
Ni lazima hawa wahalifu ambaye wametoka kaunti jirani ya Baringo, ambaye tunaelezwa ni jamii ya Wapokot, serikali ichukue hatua kwao, kwa sababu hatuwezi kujenga taifa kwa kupoteza watu.
Viongozi wa usalama kama wakaaji wa Samburu County kweli ni wa Kenya. We really just want to understand how many lives of people of Samburu County will be enough. How many lives and how many of their livelihoods will be enough to attract the attention of the government.
The education and agriculture sector will receive the lion's share of the budgetary allocation in the upcoming financial year. Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndende Nyoro, who also chairs the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the National Assembly, now says the move is aimed at uplifting the standards of education in the country.
Speaking while presiding over the disbursement of NGCDF bursary funds in Kapseret constituency, Kiharu Member of Parliament and also the chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the National Assembly, Ndindi Nyoro, said out of the 4.14 trillion budget, the lion's share goes to education and agriculture sectors.
Ya kwamba hauna pesa, ya kwamba unasomeshwa na basari, ya kwamba wewe hata unafanyiaga watu vibarua upate pesa ya kupea mtoto wako pocket money. Hiyo Mungu haangalii akibariki huyu mtoto wako.
He added that the allocation in the Ministry of Agriculture will assist in the provision of subsidized fertilizer to farmers to enable them reap profits. Meanwhile, Kenya Kwanza allied MPs have reiterated that they will support the push for Raila Odinga's bid in the AU chairmanship.
Kwa sababu yeye ametuletea mambo mingi, hata katiba alichangia, mambo mingi amechangia. Mimi naomba Wakenya wote tuko wangwana, tuunge mkono Raila Amolo Odinga awe chairman wetu wa kule, ndio pia dunia mzima ijue Wakenya ni watu wangwana.
Elsewhere, the Democratic Action Party of Kenya leader Eugene Wamalwa has now hinted that he will be taking a stab at the presidency in the 2027 general elections. Wamalwa says he will free the country from corruption that has dragged the country backwards.
Leo nasema hapa Turkana, Mungu akipenda na watu wa Turkana mpende, museme kijana ya Wamalwa akamilishe safari ya ndugu yake Wamalwa kijana. Mimi nasema ya kwamba ile executive order ya kwanza nitatoa ni kurudisha jina ya Kenya kutoka Hustler Nation to the Kenyan nation that is respected and united.
Still staying with education matters, where the Ministry of Education has instructed the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service, that is KUPS, to extend the application for placement in higher learning institutions to March the 4th this year. Education Cabinet Secretary, that is Ezekiel Machogu, said the 7 days extension will enable the remaining applicants get a chance to submit their choices both to universities and colleges. 121,391 candidates who obtained C+ and above in the 2023 KCSE examination had applied for various courses as of February the 25th, 2024.
The initial application deadline was February 22nd, 2024, but was later pushed to February 26th, 2024. Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu says as of February 25th, 2024, a total of 121,391, which is equivalent to 60.8% of the 199,695 of the students who obtained C+ and above in the 2023 KCSE examination, had applied for various courses in the institutions of higher learning. The CS saying that the ministry has taken note of the challenges that some students are facing in the ongoing application process and encouraged the applicants whose payments are experiencing unusual delays to use the USSD code *222# to confirm their payments and or trigger validation, as the ministry is working to address the challenge. He further says a detailed procedure for the process is to be disseminated immediately by KUCCPS. The CS further say that all students who scored a mean grade of between C and E are particularly asked to take advantage of the ongoing applications to select their desired diploma, craft certificate, or artisan programs offered in the ministry's TVET institutions.
Telia Marco reporting there. Now, the National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, has dismissed claims that the country's credit rating will dip owing to a decision by the Finance Action Task Force to list Kenya as one of the countries with weak anti-money laundering systems. The CS, who appeared before the National Assembly Public Debt and Privatization Law Committee, says Kenya found itself on the global grey list owing to queries on its slow pace in strengthening key institutions and implementing laws to safeguard against money laundering and terrorism financing. Abdiaziz Hashim with more details.
Barely a week after Kenya found itself in the global watch list for failing to safeguard against money laundering,
the medium-term debt management strategy,
Cabinet Secretary for Treasury Njuguna Ndung'u was before the National Assembly Committee on Public Debt and Privatization.
Remember, in 2009-2010, I fought very hard. Kenya was going to blacklisting, not even grey listing, to blacklisting.
The CS had a hard time explaining to the legislators how Kenya ended up on the global grey list.
The whole issue is that this is a new administration in transition, and with your support, we made 17 amendments to the law. But now, the shortfall now is the implementation process and strengthening our institutions.
Njuguna dismissed fears that this could affect the country's credit rating in the global arena.
But also, in terms of our credit rating, that may not worsen the credit rating. Because essentially what we're really saying is that it is the institutional DNA that is being questioned. How do we move with speed? There was an earlier question you said, were we rushing to the Eurobond because of the grey listing? No.
Further, he informed the MPs that Kenya had already reached out to bilateral and multilateral partners to seek a solution, a revelation that elicited queries.
But we are on observation to make sure that we crawl back and move away from the grey listing. By the way, some of the countries that are even providing us with bilateral support are also in the grey listing.
On the question of Eurobond,
what we did at that particular time was very appropriate because risk was actually building up and cost of risking also was building up. The waiting option was coming in. In fact, if you look at our foreign direct investments, you'll see that they had gone to zero. So essentially, they were being driven by this waiting option. And so dislodging the market from this waiting option was very important.
On that note, let's take a break. I'll be back with much more. Welcome back. Now, this sixth session of the United Nations Environment Assembly kicked off in Nairobi with the revelation that Kenya is accelerating its transition from the linear economy to a circular one. Environment Cabinet Secretary, that is Soipan Toya, speaking at the start of the week-long meeting, says Kenya is in the forefront in advocating against the triple planetary crisis of climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution.
Monday morning in Nairobi, thousands of delegates gathered for the sixth session of the UN Environment Assembly. Day one of the 5-day meeting will begin with a focus on the role of multilateralism in tackling pressing environmental challenges. Addressing the Assembly, Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Climate Change and Forestry Soipan Toya stated that the government has put in place measures intended to fight the triple planetary crisis.
We, for instance, have seen positive global progress on several fronts in the past few years, including the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the Global Framework on Chemicals, Pollution and Waste, and the UNEA 5.2 resolution to end plastic pollution and forge an international legally binding agreement by end of this year.
This, even as she called on environmental stakeholders to prioritize environmental protection and sustainability.
Flip side of this progress has also been a rather worrying trend. Scientific assessments continue to provide us with stark evidence that we must do more to address the environmental crisis.
The meeting brings together heads of state and governments and over 5,000 delegates to discuss ways of conserving the environment and mitigating against the adverse effects of climate change. The theme of this year's assembly is effective, inclusive and sustainable multilateral actions to tackle climate change, biodiversity loss and pollution.
Of course, that conference is ongoing this week, and our reporter Jailo Picho will be on that beat, and so we'll be bringing you up to date with what's happening today. Now, the government is banking on a multi-stakeholders approach to deal with challenges facing the construction industry in Kenya. The Multi-Stakeholders Agency Committee is crafting a framework that will address cases of poor workmanship, corruption and expertise shortage in the country. The committee, reconstituted in 2022, is meeting in Mombasa to highlight issues affecting the sector and propose remedial measures. O'Brien Kimani with that beat.
It's a committee that is focused to ensure that we have zero building collapses in this country. This has been a problem for Kenya, and we are gathered here to in this retreat to share ideas after the team was reconstituted in 2022 December by the CS Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development. After working for 1 year, we are now here to review the steps, milestones and the strategies to ensure that we have a well-organized built environment. Secondly, through the leadership of the head of public service, all the players within the built environment, on 28th of October last year, we met and we also agreed to ensure that we put our minds together to ensure that Kenyans get value for money.
At the end of this workshop, we expected to come up with the policy interventions that will address some of the gaps that still exist to mitigate and address the issues of incidences of collapsing buildings and even safety in the construction sector in Kenya. And most importantly, it is going to include all the players. Actually, more than 12 different players in the built environment are here, including from the county up to national government. So at the end of the 5 days, it's expected that we'll come up with robust, tangible policy interventions. And of course, the policy owner is here, our PS, which will be driven through the necessary policy developments and approval. And once done, it will improve the enforcement provision, it will improve the regulatory framework. And going forward, I think we'll be talking of safe built environment once and for all.
The construction industry is a key driver of economic development here in Kenya. The sector with a value of 2.6 trillion Kenya shillings, has undergone major challenges in the last 10 years. That requires urgent intervention if the industry will continue to grow. And that's why stakeholders from various sectors are meeting here in Mombasa to chart the way forward. From Mombasa, I'm O'Brien Kimani.
Thank you, Brian. Now let's look at sports, where two-time Olympic champion, that is Faith Kipyegon, has been nominated for the 2024 Laureus World Sports Awards, scheduled to take place on the 22nd of April in Madrid. Kipyegon became the first woman to win the double of the 1,500 meters and 5,000 meters in the IAAF World Athletics Championship in Budapest last year. She also set 3 new world records in the 5,000 meters and the 1,500 meters, taking almost a full second off the previous mark, and the women's 1 mile record, where she shaved off 5 seconds. The 29-year-old is the only Kenyan nominee and sits alongside other sporting greats such as the 200-meter world record holder Sharik Jackson, 100-meter world champion Shari Carl Richardson, and world tennis #1 Iga Swiatek. In the men's category, the nominees include tennis great Novak Djokovic, 3-time Formula 1 champion, that is Max Verstappen, Man City star Erling Haaland, and 8-time Ballon d'Or winner, that is Lionel Messi.
Jumla ya watahiniwa 121,391 waliopata alama ya C+ kwenda juu katika mtihani wa kitaifa wa kidato cha 4 KCSE.
Well, and that story brings us to the end of the news this morning. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. My name is Marie Yambo. Victor Lo will be here to take you through the rest of the show together with Mike and Vivian. Goodbye for now.
Kwa muda hadi pale